All right, welcome everyone. I'm Sophie Alexander from the Nutritional Wellness Center in Ithaca, New York, and I'm excited today to be talking all about the silent invaders within, understanding and tackling intestinal and systemic parasites. This is a topic that has played a huge role in my own health, and I see, gosh, on a daily basis with clients, and it's definitely one of the big missing pieces that can be a part of why someone's continuing to struggle with health concerns that they haven't gotten to the bottom of yet. Yeah, for me personally, gosh, doing specifically the type of products that we're going to be talking about today and talking about some of the reasons that parasites can get stuck in your system and stick around. This was a big piece for me of figuring out my gallbladder issues. And it was once I worked through some of the products that I'm going to be sharing today that I stopped having, reoccurring, ongoing gallbladder pain and digestive issues related to that. Another piece of it too has been with my children, particularly one of my children. I didn't know about some of these products and wasn't doing some of these things during her pregnancy and birth, 8, 9 years ago. And I did not realize or understand then how especially some of these systemic parasites can be passed from mother to child. So she was born just sort of dealing with some of these issues, a lot of skin issues, a lot of digestive and food sensitivities. And because she was muscle tested from a young age, gosh, we knew that she was dealing with parasite issues. But it wasn't really until the Cell Core line particularly started using those with her and with myself, getting on for 4 years ago now, that she and I were able to really get to the bottom of it together. All right, so before talking about some of those exciting details, I just always have to say as a big statement that parasites are more common than we think we are, really, especially living in the United States. It's a perception of a lot of people that this is an issue that other parts of the world deal with, that we don't deal with here, but we absolutely do. It affects populations in all sorts of different countries and parts of the world, and it definitely is an issue in the United States. This is a quote I like from sorry, just moving my image so I can read the quote to you all. But this is a quote I like from an osteopathic doctor. It's not just a third world concern. Parasites affect millions of Americans. Indeed, according to the CDC, more than 60 million people in the US are infected with parasites. Parasites are spread by pets and contaminated water and improperly handled food. They are becoming an increasingly common health threat in the United States. And intestinal parasites thrive in warm weather, so risks rise in the summer. And part of the reason that we are doing this talk right now, it's April. We see that this is the time of year that really starts to kick up. Plays a big role with seasonal allergies kicking up this time of year. Is that the parasite issues start to rise, and as we head into the summer. So this is a great time, especially if you're going to only do a parasite cleanse once or twice a year. The spring and the fall are really nice times to do that. So first of all, what are parasites? Parasites live on or inside another host organism and benefit at the host's expense. So intestinal parasites, as the name suggests, reside in the intestines. And this is where we see a lot of digestive complications and malabsorption of nutrients. Some examples of these are Giardia, roundworms, and hookworms. And I will go into more details about these guys. And then there are systemic parasites, which have a broader habitat. They live in the intestines, but also other body systems. We see them in the bloodstream, the liver, can be in the brain. See them in the sinuses a lot. This can include protozoa and tapeworms. So symptoms of systemic parasites, these can vary a lot depending on the type of parasite and including the severity of the infection, but common signs include intermittent or sustained fever and chills, fatigue and weakness, muscle and joint pain, neurological symptoms, respiratory symptoms. We see it a big piece with asthma and allergies, as I was saying earlier, gastrointestinal issues, skin rashes, hives, itching, swelling and edema, anemia, and unexplained weight loss or gain. Symptoms of intestinal parasites, again, also vary based off the type of parasite and the severity, but common signs include abdominal pain or discomfort, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, bloating and gas, weight loss and appetite changes, fatigue, constipation or irregular bowel movements, nutritional deficiencies, itchy anus or skin, or you see visible worms in stool. But I'd like to say in general, so many people do not see them in stool. And this is also true for stool tests done by medical doctors, right? It can be tricky to catch the right life stage of the worm or to actually test positive for parasites via stool. The itchy anus is a big one that is often just the one little red flag that people aren't aware of, and they're not then connecting to the bit of bloating they have or the bit of gas they have or their weight being stuck. And so many people deal with constipation, and we see it in our practice that parasites play a big role in this, but a lot of people don't connect the dots to that. So parasites, they are, gosh, it's so gross, but they're all around, right? You can get them from contaminated food and water, especially more undercooked foods. They can be in the soil, so you can get certain ones like from walking barefoot outside. Though I'm still a big fan of walking barefoot outside and getting that grounding. It is a risk. It can be general poor sanitation and hygiene practices. A lot of parasites do come from animals, especially cats and dogs. They can come from insects. They can be passed person to person. And you can get them with travel and recreation. You can get them from swimming in lakes. So there are a lot of ways you can get exposed. It can drive some of my clients crazy where they just can't figure out where they got it from. But parasites, as I'll talk about, can be really adept to hiding in our system too. So it can be hard to know if it's a new exposure or if it's something that has just been low level in your system for a long time until the parasites really, the conditions were right and the bug or bugs really started to take over and create a lot of symptoms. I have had a client who, went swimming in Cayuga Lake, swallowed a bunch of water, and then showed up for parasites. So I've had things that acutely happen. Had clients who ate sushi and a couple of weeks later, started testing for parasites. Like we've been able to link it in that way. But a lot of times the initial infection is unknown. So let's get into some details of some types of parasites. They are broadly categorized into several groups. There's the protozoa, which are single-celled organisms that often reproduce within their host. There's helminths. These are multicellular worms that live and feed within the host. And these are have a further division of nematodes, which are types of roundworms, cestodes, which are tapeworms, and trematodes, which are flukes. These general categories we can identify through muscle testing, but we generally keep it in these broad groups because we're not diagnosing. But it can be helpful to know what types of parasites you're dealing with just for how to approach them and where to look for them energetically in the body and what to expect from symptoms. There's also ectoparasites, parasites that live on the surface of the host, and these include ticks and fleas, lice and mites. The protozoa specifically are typically microscopic and thrive in various environments, from soil and water to inside human and animal hosts. These can just be tricky to treat because they have complex life cycles. They like to evade the immune system. They have various mechanisms for evading us and evading the immune defenses. And they can have different stages, an active feeding stage, and then a cyst or dormant stage. And so that's why it can be effective to cycle parasite cleansing or cycle some of the herbs that we're going to be talking about, so you can catch different stages. And also to just be persistent, right? And know that it's gonna take time. So examples of the protozoa, Plasmodium, which is also it's malaria, Giardia, um, and Toxoplasma gondii. Malaria includes, or the genus Plasmodium, known as malaria, includes several species, and it's one of the most severe and life-threatening diseases, and it's transmitted by an infected mosquito. And once in the bloodstream, it infects red blood cells and leads to cycles of fever and chills and other symptoms. And the complications can include anemia and jaundice, cerebral malaria, and so it can cause neurological damage. Giardia, this protozoan parasite, is responsible for the most common causes of waterborne illness. And it infects the small intestine. It has symptoms of diarrhea and abdominal cramps, nausea and dehydration. It spreads through contaminated water or food or person-to-person contact. So when this becomes chronic, you can have real serious malabsorption issues and weight loss. When I've seen it more acutely, of course, it's just, really upset digestive tract. And Toxoplasma gondii is particularly notorious for its complex life cycle and ability to infect all warm-blooded animals, including humans. Cats are a host. So you might have heard of this one talking about kitty litter, right? And how pregnant women shouldn't change or clean kitty litter. It's often in a lot of healthy individuals, and it just goes unnoticed. But it can cause serious complications in pregnant women and immunocompromised individuals. And it can cause brain and eye infections. So I had never heard of this until I was pregnant. Helminths are these complex multicellular organisms we generally just call worms. And they can inhabit in various parts of the host's body. They like the gastrointestinal tract, but they can affect other organs and tissues. This is one where, it starts to, talking about this can get gross, but when people have a lot of floaters, that can be certain kinds of helminths showing up in the eyes. And they can definitely be in other parts of the body. They're the main categories that I see a lot of in practice: the nematodes, cestodes, and trematodes. So the nematodes are roundworms. They're cylindrical in shape. They can, look like spaghetti, or they can look like, they can be teeny tiny too, but they have that round shape to them. And Ascaris is a common one known. And you can ingest the eggs, or you can get it through contaminated soil or food. Having them can lead to malnutrition and growth delays in children and respiratory complications. The life cycle of roundworms like this they have a life cycle in the lungs and in the gastrointestinal tract in terms of how they lay their eggs, and then those eggs hatch. We do see them in the sinuses of folks as well. And then there's pinworms, which is one of the most common nematode infections, especially in temperate regions. It primarily affects children because of their hygiene practices, because it spreads through ingesting eggs and contaminated surfaces, and the eggs are just so small and they can get everywhere. And one of the big symptoms of pinworms are really intense anal itching, can really disrupt sleep, and just cause irritation in the body. And then cestodes, right, or tapeworms. These are flat segmented worms. They can get really big, but there are also dwarfed tapeworms that are smaller. There's a beef tapeworm and a pork tapeworm that are acquired by eating undercooked beef or pork that contain the cysts in the larval stage. These are one of the main ones that we see when there's a lot of digestive discomfort, when there's issues with constipation. I see it can cause weight loss, but I also see it can be a factor in preventing weight loss too. But it's a big one when we see a lot of nutritional deficiencies in blood work or people have a lot of cravings. Um, it's like these guys are in the gut, like stealing your food, stealing your nutrients, and then the body is like saying, I still need more of these nutrients. Keep feeding me. But you as an individual are not getting nourished. They can lead to serious conditions where the larval cysts infect the brain and other tissues as well. Trematodes are known as flukes. There can be liver flukes, there can be lung flukes, there can be pancreas flukes. They can infect the blood as well. They can be very small looking, like it can look in, if you do see it in bowel movements, it can be just looking like little seeds, like little sesame seeds, but it can be bigger as well. You can get ink from contaminated water, but chronic infections can damage the liver, the intestines, the lungs, the bladder. Yeah, they definitely come from eating raw or undercooked, especially fish for this one kind of liver fluke. And they infect the bile ducts, and that's a big place where I see them. The bile ducts in the liver, it prevents bile flow in the body, bile duct issues. This can lead to the gallbladder issues. It can lead to a lot of fat malabsorption, but also because the liver is so important, like, and bile flow is so important for how the body not only digests the fats, and yeah, breaks down food in general, but that the bile is how we clean things out of the body, put things into the intestines and clean out of the body, especially how we recycle hormones and how we detoxify. That dealing with these flukes can cause a lot of other issues in the body because this very important system of the liver is not working correctly. So then there's ectoparasites. Ectoparasites are organisms that reside on the external surface of their host. They rely on it for sustenance, where they often cause discomfort and disease. So like I was just talking about all these different endoparasites that live inside our bodies, the ectoparasites attach the skin, hair, feathers, for animals, and they're found in us, right? So while they are parasites themselves, they live off us or the surface of their host. They also carry and spread other parasitic organisms. So this can include bacteria and viruses and protozoa through their bites when they come in contact with the skin and blood. So I love this file, this picture. This actually came from one of my muscle testing trainings, but it just was giving us a sense of all the different areas that parasites can reside and the different types of where they can be. And it just gives you a whole sense, of that you can find certain protozoas and sporozoas in the joints, right? They can live in the lymph system. They can be in your kidneys, in your stomach, in your large intestine, in your bladder, small intestine, pancreas, gallbladder, liver, lungs, in the brain, in the sinuses, right? So these are all the different areas that we look energetically to find them, but it also gives you a sense just of how systemic it can become, and all the different symptoms that they can contribute to. And certain kinds just love different areas. And under that key, the first one listed there, strongyloides, that's just a very specific, very stubborn kind of nematode. So a specific kind of roundworm that is one of the big ones that we see when there's a severe systemic infection, that they're the troublemakers. Yeah, so identifying parasites. In our practice, we do this primarily through muscle testing. I am trained in functional blood work. I do know what to look for, and I'll go through some of these markers with you for that as well. And we do have access to a stool test called the Gut Zoover from Vibrant Wellness, where you can, the Gut Zoomer gosh, tells us so much different information about what's going on in the intestines and the intestinal environment. It's a stool test, but can pick up sometimes specifically on finding parasites in the stool, but also some of these immune markers or other indicators that there's immune issues. But in general, it's not, as I said earlier, it is not easy to identify parasites through stool. So based off of symptoms and then based off of muscle testing and then also based off of blood work, there are some ways that we can get a real idea of and clues about what's going on. So the eosinophil count is one marker that can indicate parasite infection, IgE levels. Gosh, if there's a lot of anemia and we know how you eat or what supplements you're taking, other nutritional deficiencies, especially if we know like that how you're working to get that through diet or supplementation and those deficiencies are not improving. Liver enzymes can be a clue. C-reactive protein can be a clue, talking about systemic inflammation. And then there are specific parasite serology tests as well. Those are really quite specialty tests that are usually done through a functional medicine practitioner. So I wanted to speak about the connection of Lyme disease and parasites as well, because I feel like this is a factor I see a lot and that can really complicate it for people in terms of trying to understand what's the big issue going on in their body and the cause of their health concerns. So Lyme disease is caused by Borrelia.
Have it off in a second.
Oh, whoever that is, if you don't mind muting yourself, is transmitted through tick bites. And so these ticks, as we just talked about, are ectoparasites. So the ticks can carry other pathogens, including parasites that can co-infect the host. So often individuals with Lyme disease, their body's already dealing with this infection, like the immune system is on high alert and weakened, and it can make them susceptible to other infections, including parasitic ones. And then there's this specific protozoan parasite, Babesia, which is also transmitted by ticks, that can co-infect with the Lyme disease. And this just complicates the factor and makes the health issues more severe. So the presence of multiple infections and the parasite component can just complicate the diagnosis and the treatment of Lyme. And I see this so often with folks who will come in being like, well, I'm dealing with chronic Lyme. And we say, okay, understood, but your immune system is also burdened with all these other aspects. And you have a real severe parasite infection going on as well, because the severity or the long term of the Lyme. I know this was just a big piece for me because, I got tick bite all the way back in 2005. And, that my body was dealing with that aspect of it. But what I really observed over myself over the many years later was the Lyme component was not so much of an issue anymore, but like all these other parasitic, all these other immune issues were developing. And that actually has more, for me, at least personally, had more to do with this next slide, which is mold and parasites. So individuals living in a mold contaminated environment then also have chronic immune activation or suppression, depending on how long that's been going on. And this just really creates an internal environment that allows parasitic infections to take hold and to persist. And the relationship between mold exposure and parasitic infections is also seen in the gut, just where the mold really imbalances the microbiome with all the mycotoxins, the mold toxins, and this can promote the growth and the survival of the parasites. It just creates a really cozy environment for them to proliferate. And this was a big part of my story, that unbeknown, right, got the tick bite in 2005, and then shortly after that moved into a moldy cabin and just was unaware that that was an issue. And yeah, and then just over the years, it just created this environment where I was like, gosh, I'm feeling better in so many ways, right? I'm taking such good care of myself. I've been doing muscle testing on my body for so many years. But this one piece, like a whole gallbladder piece, just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it was really the training and the utilization of the cell core products that opened that up for me, because it was between those products that together worked on underlying toxicity issues like mold, but then really worked through the layers of the parasites that I was able to get to the bottom of that cycle. And then there's a big chemical component about parasites. Chemicals in the environment, gosh, such as pesticides. I mean, heavy metals are not a chemical, but is also another toxin. Industrial pollutants, gosh, all the chemicals in our drinking water can have a significant impact on our immune systems and the behavior of parasites. Because these substances not only they alter how parasites interact with us, um, again, it's creating an environment in the body that makes it hospitable for these bugs to proliferate, and to keep morphing, which I will talk about as well in a moment, because yeah, the body cannot correct and regulate the system of the microbiome that's supposed to be self-regulating, and our bodies has so many tools to consistently work on improving that the chemicals disrupt all of that. And then there's an interesting component that can happen too, where the parasites can actually, to a degree, be trying to protect us and help us, in the sense that the parasites can be acting as sponges in our system. There's been some amazing study that I have read where the parasite, say a tapeworm that was taken from a person's body, or excreted from a person's body, tested higher for heavy metals than that individual body did, meaning that the parasite was a sponge for the toxins, a sponge for the heavy metals, a sponge for the pesticides. And the reason that the parasites were becoming so persistent and sticking around and proliferating is because of the chemical component the body was dealing with. And so part of cleaning up the bugs and stopping the cycle of these bugs in the body have to disrupt the cycle with the chemicals. And we see that a lot actually with drinking water. If there's just really persistent parasites, especially intestinal parasites, and the person's doing all these wonderful supplements and cleanses, and we just still see the bugs like just laying their eggs, working their cycle, just continually coming back. There's chemicals, the person's not drinking clean enough water. There's chemicals in the water, and that's persisting the environment in the gut and making it so the bugs keep coming back. We also see this as part of when we're doing parasite cleanses. We have to be really aware about what binders we're using, what cleanup crew we are using behind the parasite cleanse, because these parasites contain the heavy metals, they contain the chemicals, they hold on to mold, they work to protect the body from mold. And so we need to be, at the same time killing the bugs, we need to be cleaning up these toxins as well. So it's important to talk about the concept of pleomorphism, because this plays a big role in dealing with parasites. Pleomorphism, is the ability of some organisms, like certain parasites, to change their shape, size, or structure, like having the ability to transform their appearance or behavior to adapt to different environments or situations. So this helps them survive under various conditions, escape the defenses of host's immune system, or resist treatments. So pleomorphism, specifically in parasites, allows the parasites to adapt to different environments and defenses. For example, they might change form to resist harsh conditions outside the host or to evade the host's immune system. And it's just, it just complicates things, because since parasites can alter their appearance and behavior in response to remedies and changes in our internal environments, it can go both ways. I was just talking about how much they can pleomorph and really change when they're exposed to chemicals and how much then that can cause them to take over. It's just also something to be really aware of when you're doing parasite cleansing too. And that's why we need to cycle the cleansing, we need to cycle the herbs, we need to take breaks, we need to cycle the binders, the cleanup crew behind the bugs as well, just to stay on top of this. So in general, broad spectrum prevention with parasites, I mean, it involves a combination of personal hygiene, awareness with your diet, as much environmental things as you can control. Um, so just general, yeah, good hygiene practices, especially with little kids. Gosh, washing their hands, not putting their fingers in their mouth and up their nose. It's so challenging, but it helps. Ensuring safe drinking water. Gosh, this is a huge category. I've done talks about this just on its own. Most people really don't realize how many chemicals are in their water, and they think their water is great, or they think even if they're filtering it a bit with like a Brita filter or some other more complex multi-step filter, they think they're drinking okay water. I personally, several years ago, switched to drinking remineralized distilled water, because it's with the distillation process is the only way you can know that everything is out of the water. You have to add back in minerals, because minerals are so important for life. But that way, with the distilled water, you know that there's nothing else in it besides H2O. So I have this happen a lot with clients because they yeah, they're working so hard on their diet, but it's really their water that's holding them back. Of course, handling and preparing food safely, that's a straightforward one. Pet care can be a big one, like monitoring your own animals for parasites. In general, it's good practice to not let your animals sleep on your bed. And if you do, gosh, changing your sheets regularly and making sure your animals are also on regular parasite cleansing. Maintaining a healthy diet and a balanced diet, I'll speak more to in a moment. And just being aware and educated about these things so that you can also be quick to look for signs. My husband loves sushi, so he eats it, but then we're monitoring him really closely for parasites afterward, or he's even preventatively taking things right around consuming the sushi, things like that. And yeah, and I watch my children closely, especially around the full moon, to whether I need to be doing additional supplementation. All right, so sugar and parasites. Most or many parasites consume or utilize sugar as energy. So they thrive on the glucose found in the host's bloodstream and present in the diet. They really like to hack our energy metabolism. So we don't feel like we're getting the same energy from our food, right? Which makes us then want to eat more for energy. Particularly, the body starts sending messages to the brain like, gosh, I'm not making energy properly. I'm not getting enough nutrients because the parasites are stealing the nutrients. And then that registers in the brain as well, give me more quick glucose, give me more quick sugar. So sometimes really severe sugar cravings and blood sugar issues can be because of the parasites. And so being aware of this can be really powerful, because you need to do your best, right? To just nourish your system with proteins and fats and slow carbohydrates, so that you are, using diet as a tool to clear out the bugs as well. Because otherwise, yeah, the parasites just perpetuate and they get stronger and stronger. Yeah, it can be a tricky cycle, but knowing that the parasites are playing a role in hijacking your system can be really a powerful way to work through the cravings, and to know that by resisting the sugar, you're working on starving them out. All right, so these herbs are known for their anti-parasitic properties. It's wormwood and black walnut, clove and garlic, oregano, pumpkin seeds, golden seal, ginger, turmeric, neem, pau d'arco, and berberine containing plants. And in general, I encourage people who are dealing with parasites to have these in their diet, especially the food-based ones. And then they're in the supplements that we work with for parasite cleansing. And so let's get more into that part of it now. So a parasite cleanse is a dietary and or supplement regimen aimed at detoxifying the body and eliminating parasites. And these cleanses often involve various herbs and supplements, dietary recommendations designed to create an environment in the body that's hostile to these bugs. My favorite is the Cellcore Parasite Cleanse. It involves 4 products using Para 1, Para 2, biotoxin binder, and Para 3. And between the 3 paras, we get a wonderful covering of a lot of the herbs that I just listed on the previous slide, as well as a powerful binder, biotoxin binder made from bioactive carbons that works as a great sponge and cleanup crew from everything that needs to come behind these bugs dying off. And what's nice about doing for a concentrated period, the Para 1, Para 2, and Para 3, is they're all designed to clean up different parasites. So you're covering a broad spectrum all at once, depending on what shows up for that, what's going on in the body, and particularly when timing it around the full moon, what's coming up in that person's body around that full moon energy. So a full moon challenge, right? And why the full moon? We'll talk about that. So parasite cleansing can be done at any time, right? And I have people doing it, continually. Or I'll speak that again. It's always done in cycles, right? It's a indicator something is not right if you're just having to continually parasite cleanse, right? But there is a key factor with the full moon and the flow of the cycle of that we can really use to our advantage with parasite cleansing. So everything in nature has cycles. And so I already spoke about how there's cycles with the seasons, and we see parasites really show up a lot in the spring and in the fall when there's some of those liver cleansing cycles happening and seasonal changes. And then there's the full moon cycle. And this plays a big role because it influences our body's level of neurotransmitters. So during the full moon, melatonin levels drop. And when these go down, parasite activity goes up. Parasites are known for their overnight activity, and this gets highly elevated during the full moon. And parasites, they eat the neurotransmitters that are in our guts. And so I didn't speak to this at all actually in this talk, but this is why there can be a whole lot of emotional symptoms that come up with parasites and with parasite cleansing that are just as difficult to navigate as the physical, right? It can be high anxiety, it can be severe depression. I guess, yeah, there's a lot that comes from this component. And then there's the aspect that serotonin, which is our feel-good neurotransmitter, also has the same effect on parasites. So when levels of serotonin are low, parasites become paralyzed. When it's up, the bugs come out to play. So, before I get into this part and graphic, yes, we got some graphic content coming up. That's just why I wanted to speak to, it can be so powerful to utilize that full moon time because there's just so much more activity to really knock the bugs back. All right, so if you're not into seeing this, please just turn away for a moment. But these are pictures of what clients have taken of after doing parasite cleansing, and particularly doing the full moon cleanse, so it can give you a sense of some things to be aware of or to look for. It's gross, but it's a reality. Particularly some of these long ones. You see the tape measure next to it. Those are more in the tapeworm category, but it can be passing little circular, more fluke-looking things as well. And that's to say some people, gosh, they don't see anything at all. And some of these people have just passed only this, like as it felt like a bowel movement. I've never personally, but my daughter has, and I've had clients have who've actually like, had to pull some of these long pieces like out of the body as they've started to pass when it felt like they had to have a bowel movement. But I've also had many clients who just, no awareness at all. They get symptom relief in other ways, but they don't see anything. But the benefits of a parasite cleanse, right? So of course it's getting rid of these bugs that are wreaking such havoc. One of the quickest things we see is improved digestive health. Overall, it enhances immune function, it increases energy levels, supports detoxification, and we see improved nutrient absorption. And I think it's just so important to say, like, if you're interested in doing something like this, it's brand new to you, to just proceed with mindfulness and consult with a qualified practitioner like myself, because it's so individualized, and there can be a lot of different layers to it. But at the same time, especially if you're brand new, or actually, I'll say whether you're brand new or whether you're seasoned, this is something it's safe to do, that you can jump in and just see, get things started, see what happens for you. But if it is brand new to you and it really stirs the pot, then you're going to want to follow up, because it just means there's more work to be done. But with Cellcore's Full Moon Challenge, you can choose whether to do it for 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days. It's really designed as whether you're a beginner, you're brand new to it, it's intermediate, or it's advanced. And so the beginner, you just start the day before the full moon, you do it the day of and the day after. And then intermediate starts a little bit sooner, and advanced starts 3 days ahead of time. And if you're a beginner, these are some doses that are recommended. If you're a client at the Nutritional Wellness Center, you can have these muscle tested and dosed to you, but you don't have to. You can just do it. You do 2 para 1 in the morning and 2 para 2 in the evening. Same with para 1. You do drops of the para 3 throughout the day, and then you take biotoxin binder throughout the day as well. When you're doing intermediate, then you basically double those doses. And then when you're getting into advanced, you triple that dose. And I must admit, it's for some cases, especially when I have had people already previously having done parasite cleansing, have been on the Cellcore products already at their own pace at other times. Then when we got into these advanced levels of dosing around the full moon, that we saw some of these bigger tapeworm pieces being passed. I often like to think of it as like with our health, we're ever climbing a spiral ladder, and just as we're revisiting issues, we're revisiting them at a new unit at a time, at a deeper level. And that's really how in my experience, how it is with parasites, just because of all the layers of toxicity and all the ways that they can adapt and hide in our system. And just using the energy of the full moon and the timing, and hitting it in a new unit at a time, it breaks through to a new level. There are other tools that can really help when doing a parasite cleanse. Again, these are big topics. They could be whole other talks, but I just wanted to mention them briefly because they are things that we recommend clients do. Infrared sauna for its movement with supporting lymph and supporting drainage of these toxins. I didn't list here, but another one is doing the ion cleanse detox foot bath. That can really help move toxicities. I've had colleagues where they've actually seen parasites showing up in the foot bath. Coffee enemas are a big one because it supports cleansing not only of the GI tract, but it's primarily designed to help boost bile flow and glutathione production for the liver. And so especially for those stubborn flukes that have colonized and taken over the gallbladder and the bile ducts, the coffee enemas can really help. And then sinus rinses, particularly sinus rinses, putting a small amount, like a drop of para 3 in there. If the parasites have colonized the sinuses, that can be very powerful and effective as well. So we have a client testimonial from Beth. I did my first full moon challenge in February. I had been waking up 3 times a night for a very long time. Fabiola had identified parasites in my system and recommended the 3-day full moon challenge. I've been so surprised at how well I am sleeping. I was hesitant to believe the challenge could have made such a change, but I'm rarely waking through the night since the February challenge. I plan to continue the full moon challenge and look forward to more positive results. Yay, Beth! So the nice thing about the full moon challenge is that you can utilize it as a tool once a month. You can ramp up with it and get to more and more advanced levels. It's also a tool that you can use with the seasonal changes. And it can be used to enhance anybody's program, whether they have never done any kind of muscle testing and supplements, or whether you've been doing it for years and you've done previous parasite cleansing, or even when you're currently in the middle of parasite cleansing. It's really so universal in that way, and it can build upon any foundation. So I encourage you to get started with it if you haven't already, and reach out to us, whether by phone or by email. Visit our website, and we can share more with you the power of parasite cleansing. Thanks so much for joining me.